I welcome you to our program that is entitled Integrated Theology. This is our fourth class course, which is entitled Theosci Philosophy. Theosci philosophy is not the bulk of what integrated theology is, but it is simply a tool that is put together to help us understand the process of using integrated theology. I am your host, Bishop Dr. Derek A. Reeves, and let's dive right into our lesson today. Today, we're going to talk about the religious traditions of the natural world. And it's very important that we come to understand that, again, when we deal with the primitive aspect of nature, it was always seen that there were gods, these beings that controlled the aspects of nature, simply because they could not understand what was going on. So let's dive in. Early humans attributed natural phenomena to gods to explain the unknown, as they lacked scientific understanding for powerful events like storms, earthquakes, etc. It is very important because this practice helped them to feel a sense of control, assigned meaning to unpredictable events, and provided social and cultural cohesion through shared beliefs and rituals, as we covered in the last lecture. And so they sought to explain the unknown. And so this brought a God of the gaps. Before scientific explanations existed, people filled the gaps in their knowledge with supernatural agents like gods. They sought to answer why. And so the various phenomena like lightning, thunder, and the changing seasons were seen as too powerful to be random, so they were attributed to the beings and the actions of these beings or deities who could cause them. And so one of the aspects was they began to personify the forces by giving human-like traits to these forces, such as making them wrathful, jealous, or commanding. They could be understood in some way by using an anthropomorphic system to give them causation. And so another aspect, they chose to feel a sense of control because now they could go to these gods, they could appease these gods, and they could deal with the phenomenon. Ritual and appeasement was part of the worshiping of a god, and this was done as a way to try and influence or control events. If things were happening that were devastating the community, then they sought to please the god, to speak to the gods and see what can they do to cause this god or gods to find favor or to show favor to them. And so they could also predict the future by understanding the will of the gods. And so before people believed they could predict certain scenarios, they had no clue as to what's going on. So now, when they add these theotic beings, they now have a sense of control. We can barter, we can reason with these gods. And so this construction of a religiosity started to also create meaning and social cohesion. It assigned meaning through the myths, and it helped to give meaning to natural events and the human experience. It was transforming the chaotic events into more understandable narratives. But the issue of this is because they could not understand it, something within them. There is something in the mind of man, something in the nature of man, because his outshoots or his origin comes from the breath of God, caused them to now seek the gods to find out if these gods were in reality controlling scenarios. I believe it was the inner seed of the divine. God created Adam and gave him the breath of life. And there was a time period when all of humanity understood God. But then, because of the fall, they drifted further and further away. And as men began to assume that they were more intelligent than what they were, they began to adapt more of a Lagosian structure. And so they created these gods to gain understanding that they had lost. They created these gods to fill in the gaps of their lack of knowledge. But again, we have to understand inspiration was a great part of this. Fallen entities inspired mankind to develop, and in many cases taught them how to develop religious systems. And these religious systems move them further and further away from God, to the point where eventually God was programmed out of every system that dealt with ontological reality. This is all the time we have. I thank you for joining me. This has been Integrated Theology. I am your host, Bishop Dr. Derek A. Reeves. Remember, Jesus is coming again. You must be ready. God bless.